Hello, hello, hello. Another stream, another miniature. This time it's the Intrepid Emissary from the Explorers Society faction, which is a pretty bizarre model. It is an emissary and it's pretty awesome. And this was one of the miniatures that really caught my attention when I saw the first previews of the Explorers Society faction. Let me just slightly tilt the lamp and adjust it to have a more direct lighting on the miniature itself. And I need to be mindful of the space and position my standard white backdrop. Hey, it's a big kitty. It's a big kitty. It's a lion of a kitty. And it will be challenging. I mean, I've painted this miniature. I've painted two Intrepid Emissaries before, but I haven't painted them like I'm going to paint this one, because this one will be painted to resemble white marble. So it will be a lot of highlights, a lot of thinning down the paint, some hints of teal, maybe some hints of blue, maybe some hints of green, and that will contrast with the red base that I have going for this keyword. And we'll see how it goes. In the meanwhile, since the previous stream, I've been painting some of the Explorer stuff. So this is one example. This is Mr. Mordrake. Such an amazing miniature. I mean, I've painted it over a stream, but here it is in its full finished glory. It's pretty scary, really. The kind of hollow and probably soundless, or I can't imagine what a scream made by this creature would sound like. And those were painted offline, but those are probably my favorite miniatures from the faction, so I needed to get them out of the way first because I like them so much. But these are just amazing. The Deva. And the idea of the magenta glowy thing on the base is that those are the summons, so those are the miniature that enter the game, that can enter the game as summons. And that's the other one. Those elongated limbs look really creepy. I mean, creepy in a good way, because they make for some really nice canvas for paints. And the third one, which is also has a kind of vampiric look. So I played a lot with different shades of green, brown, even a touch of purple. So those were the miniatures I've painted so far, but today it's going to be all about the big boy, the big cat, the emissary. Yeah, that's my thinking. You just quoted me. I need to buy X miniature. It's my typical response when I see new stuff. So what I'm going to do now is, first of all, I will bring up the white a little bit, just kick it up a notch so that it's more on the pure white spectrum, trying to keep the recessed areas a bit grayish. Then I will start applying thin down wash into the recessed areas, which will be a time-consuming process because I want to get smooth transitions. Then I will be filling in all the cracks with different shades of dark brown, maybe a touch of green, and some gold, because the idea is to make a marble like streak with gold, maybe black, maybe green. I'm not sure. It's a typical state of mind that I have when I start painting a project. I just don't know where it takes me, and I welcome it, because that's part of the fun, not exactly knowing. You know, it's like Miley Cyrus says, it's all about the journey. You might have seen this meme. So let's start the journey on this one, and I'll grab my mid-size brush, one that can hold more paint. I will thin down some pure white, so I'm going straight on with that white from Vallejo Game Color, which is my favorite color range. and I'm not sponsored by them. It's just the quality of paint speaks. And what I'm doing is essentially I'm just applying a slightly thin down white, making sure that it covers all the raised areas, leaving some of the grayish white stuff in the recessed areas, starting with his left arm. It's a phenomenal miniature, truly. It's like a statue come to life. And the base will be red, so that will make for a nice contrast. And the reason I'm not painting red now is that we may use some dry pigments on the base, depending on how the overall composition looks like. Trying to ensure that the white I'm using is not contaminated by other things. So in order to ensure that, I will just get hold of an empty 40mm base. I'll put some white on it, and that will make it easy, because otherwise if I put it on my palette, it dissolves some of the paint that's already on it and can have negative impact. So that's my mini palette. I have plenty of those bases lying around. I mean, not lying around, but stored in one of my cases, because I use a lot of pre-made resin bases. And those, you never know how can you use and where you will use some of the hobby resources that are at first glance just leftovers. So I'm just taking my time, applying thin down paint, not really hurrying, because if you apply too much of thin down paint, it creates some kind of bubbles, looks bad. Let me maybe readjust slightly my face cam. There, it should be better, so that I can look straight into it every now and then. Generally, all the emissaries are impressive miniatures, and my favorite one, and I'm biased here, is probably the Neverborn one, because it's like a walking diorama. It has those changelings, those elf-like creatures on the base, and it's a walking tree with with plants that look like Plants vs Zombies, like taken from the Plants vs Zombies game. Super fun. It's so much detail packed on a large scale miniature, and it's a great model in game. So I'm biased. That's my favorite. The other ones that are pretty amazing as well are definitely the Ten Thunders one, because it's like massive dragon in this classic Eastern aesthetic. Super nice miniature. The Bio one is it's pretty incredible as well, because it's like a mini diorama. There's so much going on it that it's just, and it has this wacky fun factor to it. What else do we have? We have the big crow for the Resers, which is again a cool miniature. Then we have the guild one, which is super dynamic, again packed with detail. Haven't painted that one yet, but eventually I will. And what else do we have there? We also have Guild, Rezus, Thunders. Of course, the Arcanist one, the Raging Mechanic Bull. I had the pleasure of painting it. Again, incredible miniature. And I'm just keeping on adding more white to it. And again, trying to make sure that, for example, this area on the shield, the interior area is not fully covered with white, that there is some of this slightly gray showing through. Because then I will tint it, and white, whatever you mix with white, white tends to absorb it, and you need to be very, very careful. That's why I will be using super thin paints today. So it's I typically start with bright base coat, more towards the zenithal pre-shading. This time I'm using almost pure white base coat, but it's all for a good reason. This looks better now. So essentially I'm going almost towards pure white. So it's just thin layer of paint on thin layer of paint on thin layer of paint. And at the same time trying to leave some of the slightly darker shade in the recessed area. Haven't played the game in a while. It's been a while. Haven't played the Malifaux game, but I have some games scheduled against some buddies in my local area this Thursday evening. So in 2 days' time, 2 days from now, I will be playing Malifaux. And then there is a tournament coming up in Kraków in the south of Poland on June 24th. Local tourney. I expect there would be 10, maybe around 10 people, maybe 12. And I've already bought the train ticket, so I fully intend to be there. And I hope my kids have the same plan, that daddy can leave home for a while. Last time it didn't pan out that well, because kids tend to get sick when you are about to leave on a trip, and that's what happened. So let's hope this time things are different. And I've been speaking of games. I've been, well, I can say wasting my time recently playing some video games. I'm a big fan of Diablo game, and I bought this one for my PlayStation and played a bit of it. I mean, a couple of evenings, and I'm saying wasted time because, after I had this reflection that yesterday I actually started painting some other Explorer Society models. And my reflection was that, yeah, video games are fun. They are relaxing. They are visually appealing. They look nice, and they get you carried away into this digital world. They can be challenging at times, but they aren't really creative. And after like a few evenings with Diablo, I just thought that painting is more fun. Haven't finished the game, just played some of the story. The visuals are good, the story is nice, just the gameplay isn't that fun for me, or maybe I'm just getting old. Because my idea was just playing the game using an army of the dead and the necromancer, and doesn't really seem to be working that well in this version of Diablo. So I'm back to painting. Although I will finish the game eventually, because the story is pretty decent. The cinematics are, well, they always are impressive in these type of games. But painting is just different. Even if I'm not painting a miniature for my own collection, even if it's a miniature for someone else, it's still part of the process, and I see that some kind of tangible effect of my work. And you don't get that in video games. You just don't get this kind of reward for your work by having something that you can hold in your hand and appreciate. But then it's I'm not saying video games are wrong. There's nothing wrong with them, and it's a perfectly legitimate and valid way of just unwinding and chilling out. But just painting is more fun for me, and I think a lot of people who watch these streams will agree with me that there is something special about having a kind of hobby that allows you to create something nice. And again, nice is a highly objective criterion, but let's say something that's visually pleasing for an individual. All right, that's almost white enough. I will add a few touches of white here and there. And the reason I'm not using dry brushing is that with dry brushing, you don't really thin down the paint. It can leave some particles and essentially distort the surface of the miniature. Okay, I guess it's close to what I want it to be at this stage. I can just clean the brush. And here you can see that if I need to take it out from my holder. If I rotate it so that you see it from the bottom, it's still somewhat grayish in the recessed areas. Definitely darker than white. So that was the plan to get to this point. And now it will be the fun part. So the shading, but the shading will, I just need another base for that, another empty base. This should do well. That will be fine. So what I'm going to do now is I will just use Flash Wash, which is this brownish, very slightly reddish, it's kind of sepia-like color. And I will thin it down, but first of all, I will give it a good shake. apply it, make some medium with it. I think I have run out of Lamian medium. Don't see it anywhere. So probably I finished it. So I will just go with Express color. So that's Express medium, and I will thin it down considerably, like 3 parts of the medium to 1 part of wash. Then I will take a brush, a fairly small one, which can hold some paint, mix it in so that it doesn't leave much trace. Okay, it's pretty thin. That's more or less how I want it to be. And I will start filling in the recessed areas with it. And I think I will start with the shield, just so that I have a good idea of how it will work on the rest of the miniature. So that's tinting the recessed areas. See, it doesn't leave that much of a trace. Essentially just slightly tinting the recessed areas. So that's going to be like probably the next hour of the stream, give or take. But after I'm done with it, you will see that the effect will be as if the miniature received like another dimension. And the reason I thin it down is that otherwise it would tint the white surface very much, and that way it can stay pretty neutral. It can blend in easily rather than turn the white area brown immediately. So it won't have that much of an impact. It still has impact, but this way I'm just able to have better control of it. There are those cracks, and it nicely flows in. I will start with the shield, then I will do the same thing on the body. And it's just a slow process. Because the next step will be to take even a finer brush and follow the sketch of darker shade, dark brownish shade that I've just applied, and get it darker. And then I will need to work with white again to bring it up back to pure white, because some of the raised areas will be inevitably affected by brown. Such as this mouth here. And once it dries, it's going to look pretty cool. And I think I will go for the glowy eyes on this one. Maybe not the red that I had on those summons that I painted recently, but maybe more towards blue, light blue or navy blue, depending really on how other elements line up together. It's a different type of miniature because 99% of the miniature will be painted using the same technique. And typically when I paint miniatures, I can use different approaches, different techniques on the skin, on materials, on the weapons, on some magical effects. And Malifaux miniatures have plenty of those going about them, but this time it's more of strategic planning on how to really paint a cohesive piece using the same technique. And I'm enjoying it. I'm definitely enjoying the process. I choose miniatures for streams on purpose that allow me to just use different techniques and do something different each time I have a stream. So as you should be able to tell at this point, the front of the shield is beginning to slowly look like a piece of marble. Very slowly. But that will receive more depth once I start really letting in some darker shades and then tweaking the whole appearance with light shades of green, maybe blue. And again, now the right arm holding the shield. So there is a temptation to just go crazy with the brown and fill in the whole recessed areas, but it's not going to work that well because essentially this is like a marble piece, large piece of marble that's walking and roaring. That's why I'm just taking my time and only applying this light brown shade into the most recessed areas. There's like a thin outline around the middle here, and I'm just using the tip of my brush. We'll need to hold it upside down for a while to navigate around it. Some police action going outside. Could be the fire brigade as well because it's been raining for a while now. We've enjoyed a couple of days of really summer-like weather. It was super dry and very hot, and now we have more rain, so it means that the earth is dry, so the water that falls doesn't really soak into the ground that well, and there can be local floodings, unfortunately, as a result. But the last weekend was the most sunny and warm weekend we've experienced in a long, long while. And you know what? It's kind of beginning to look like a marble. While preparing for this stream, I was just browsing online resources for references of marble, and I found also a lot of great tutorials on painting marble on miniatures. 90% of them involved using airbrush for some nice, fast, and easy effects. But I'm not an avid user of airbrush. I mean, haven't used mine in a couple of years now, and I don't know if it's any use anymore. It's been sitting in the cellar for past 2-3 years. So I'm moving onto the main body and trying to let brown into all the recessed areas and really focusing around where the hair meets the shoulder pad. But at the same time, slightly tinting the surface. And the effects are not immediately visible. They will become more visible as I gradually start adding more brown to it. But it was definitely a good idea to use a medium rather than water, because water wouldn't affect that much the way that the wash impacts the white surface. It would make it brown wherever it touches. And here I have more control. I can kind of push the brown into the recessed areas, and even if I lightly touch on the raised surface, it doesn't change the color that much. I think that the line along the side of the shield also makes sense. It's not like highlights, it's the reversal process actually. Now the massive head, the lion head. Looks like mane, but it's more like dreadlocks. And you see at this point, I partially cover the raised areas as well with brown, which isn't that much of a problem because I can still work over that with pure white at a later stage. Also need to prepare more mix. And frankly, I don't know how much of pure white I'm going to use on those raised areas. I would assume at this point, absolute minimum, just so that pure white would be like this final touch. While looking at pictures of marble, I noticed that clearly the different lines of color are highly regular. And again, some more into the recessed areas. It looks glossy, but actually I'm kind of leaning towards making the whole miniature look glossy and using gloss varnish as a final touch. Just because marble tends to be glossy anyways. A bit more on the left arm now, the one holding the spear. And the miniature itself, I see it pretty much, maybe not every time, but quite often when I faced explorers in game. The emissary is there. He's like, he can be a beater because his damage profile is like a typical focused beater. Starts with 2, ends with 6, I believe. So, while if hitting with focus, he can dish out a lot of damage. But his main use that I see on the other side of the table is that of defensive sword, because he can take the hit, so he can become the target. So if someone targets, let's say, Master, like Yenza or Maxine, who tend to take this miniature commonly, he becomes the target, and he has defense 7. So he can win a lot of defensive duels. It's a high value, which at first glance even discourages attacking him, because if your attack value is 6, then you know that you're likely facing an uphill battle. And he can throw that spear and he can move other models around. So he helps with the unpack. He has this defensive presence. So a good model and an incredible centerpiece to the crew once deployed on the table. So I think I've made a good choice with the shade of brown I'm using for those glazes now. Glazes of recessed areas. Having a sip of not a very tasty but effective energy drink, just to keep my eyes open. I mean, it's not that late yet. Still not even 10 p.m. It will be. It seems like I'm not changing much, but it's like becoming gradually more three-dimensional. We'll need to add more of the mix in a second because the one that I have, I've almost run out of it. But it is slowly, but steadily changing the appearance towards what I want it to be. And the changes will become more and more pronounced as I continue working. It's hard enough actually to paint marble effect on two-dimensional piece, and doing it on a fully three-dimensional piece, which represents a highly dynamic figure, then makes it all the more challenging. So I'm trying just to limit myself to focus on one area at a time, like this thigh now, and trying not to move between different pieces of armor at the same time. I think that I will also try to add a hint of gold. That may push it a bit over the top, but well, I will see. Plenty of time left. It's just the first hour of the stream, and as I had predicted, the initial darkening of the recessed areas is taking me about an hour, well, 45 minutes roughly. Though I started with some work on white, so generally everything is going according to the non-existent plan. Whenever I pause, I also look carefully at where I could potentially apply a bit more of the light brown. So the previous ones that I painted, they were more towards the gray, darker scale. I do not have them anymore at home because I painted them for someone else. So it's probably won't be able to get a comparison picture. One thing that's definitely great about this miniature, which is these days a typical characteristic of wood models, that all the pieces come together so well that you really don't need any modeling putty to fill in the gaps. They just seem to fit together extremely well. Now a little bit dark, a little of darkening on the tail as well. And stage 1 or stage 1.5 of making it look like a piece of marble will be almost complete. Because the next stage will comprise of keeping it even a bit more dark. So here we are after stage 1. That's the miniature. I think that the effect is better visible on the front of the shield. Or you can really see the kind of impact those light brown glazes made. And it already looks like a piece of marble from that angle. So this medium slows down the drying process as well, which is fine. And I like the kind of glossy effect it gave. The glossy finish. I think that I will still apply a little bit more to some of the recessed areas which have nice shape to them, like this, what looks like a face mask on the chest, just to work along the shaded areas. Maybe it's a good idea to actually hold it at this angle and look where else I could potentially add a hint of slightly darker shade of brown. Yeah, that's it. I mean, not it, meaning the finished product, but getting towards that. Now I'll go to mid brown, I think. I'll get a different shade of wash. Let me just find it. Mid brown. Okay. Give it a shake, and I would see how it works directly. What kind of impact it makes on the model. So I'll get a thinner brush, not the smallest one, but a thin one. And I will continue filling the recessed areas. Okay, it is darker indeed. So why don't I actually do the left side? I will just do the left arm, the forearm. I think I will do it in this order, that I will be moving gradually towards darker colors. At some point, maybe even towards either heavy brown or maybe even black. That's a big maybe, because I'm not sure myself. So leaving some like those thin lines, vein-like shapes, seemingly random. Just trying to replicate roughly what I saw while looking at pictures of white marble. And of course, would be easier with proper tools and an airbrush, but I don't like to make my life too easy. So I'm doing it all with a brush. There will be a lot of tinting the edges. Well, not only the edges, but rather the surfaces later on. And I think I will do the face next, after I'm done with this arm. So this will likely, I think that now that I've base coated all the shaded areas, the following steps will be a bit faster. So I expect that this stage will take me less than the previous effort, probably around 30 minutes before I move to the next color. Just making sure I rotate the miniature. It's a bit something that could look a little bit like a lightning bolt. That's what I guess that's what I'm after on the blade of the spear. It's different type of painting, because typically what I do is I follow a set pattern, and I'm very rigorous about it, and I observe all the systematic steps, such as placing highlights where I want them to be. And here I'm just more of improvising and doing seemingly random splashes of darker shade, but the seemingly part comes with the study of how marble looks like. It just doesn't look like it has a consistent, coherent structure. So the interior part of the head and the mouth, which I really want to be darker. The nostrils, and I will just look at it from this angle because that will give me a better idea of where to place those shaded areas. Yep, slowly progressing. I think that also will become, the whole thing will become much more interesting once I start tinting it with teal. But it's just the first hour of the stream, so plenty of time to play around with different nuances of shades. I think I will just kind of isolate those hair strands or dreadlocks or whatever it is. Like more like feels more like dreadlocks. I may do some hobby cheating later on and use a paint that is not paint but flows very well into the recessed areas, and that could be like a nice final touch here. But I'm jumping ahead. I'm nowhere near thinking about final touches as I'm very much midway through painting this model, or maybe even less than that, which is fine. And again, getting more contours and better defined surfaces as I continue. Here I can't really afford doing this random splashes of brown and those seemingly random veins on those elements because there isn't really much space, and the way that miniature is sculpted is that it has some clearly defined recessed areas, and if I don't use darker shade in them, then it's going to kind of break the overall composition. So I'm trying to do some kind of compromise between this random marble structure and clearly defined shapes on the model itself. This miniature just has to look good because it's literally, quite literally, a centerpiece of many, many explorers' crews. Now going along the nicely defined texture on the back. Maybe I will hold it at a different angle so that I actually touch up on those areas which I know would be darker. So more towards here-ish. And here. It's crazy to think that we're already halfway through the year. Feels like it has just started. And very soon it will be actually my third year of doing these word painting streams. And each stream is as fun as exciting as the first one, really. Doesn't really change over time. Here I will just apply some more direct shade to those areas below the shoulder blades, well, below the armor here, not the shoulder but upper arm guards. You could say that time flies by when you're having fun, but the thing is that it's really, really still a very enjoyable process. And you know that if I was left to my own devices, I would probably at this point maybe take a break, fix a cup of coffee or tea, or have a snack. And those streams allow me to really be fully focused on what I have at hand, so that there are no excuses and interruptions. It got a bit blurry, but I'm sure it will stabilize in a second. Maybe I need to remove some additional objects that are in the way. Maybe also slightly change my position. Keep on painting. It looks better now, I think. So before I move to I started with the shield. This time I will, for this color, I will finish with the shield because I want to get the main body first. And I don't want to add darker shades to all the elements which were treated with slightly brighter shade of brown, because then it takes away this random patchy appearance that marble has. So I'll try to be, I'll just try to be more random. Just like here. So that's whole right, almost whole right side, because there's still the whole shield to do, and the shield is larger element. At this point, maybe I will already take out my hobby cheating paint. My hobby cheating paint, which is not paint. Now, which drawer was it in? I think here. No. Let me just grab it. There it is. No, that's a glue. This is the one that I was looking for. So it's panel line accent color, which is black, but it's going to work fine with what we have here. I'll give it a bit of shake, and I will. Essentially, this has a very tiny tip. It's a very nice consistency, and it just flows super well into the recessed area. So let's test it. Oh, it has a strong smell as well. Let's see what happens if I touch up on this one here. See, it immediately made it almost black. I think it's pretty solid solution for this extra dark outline. Just need to be careful about it. And very carefully paint along the teeth. So those areas now that are they really want to be darker. Then I will probably use some hair dryer to speed up the drying process. And let it flow into those cracked bits so that it gives them a slightly better definition. As you can see, the paint just jumps off of it and immediately flows into the recessed areas. And I can use it more selectively, just touch on those areas which I think could benefit from being a little bit darker. So again, going around the miniature. And kind of enhancing those areas which I want to be slightly darker, but it's already starting to look a bit more defined now. And I can also use it to paint along those random lines that I created earlier. To further boost this area of this image of the idea of random pattern to it. So again, remove the excess, and I'm applying it directly from below. From this angle, it just allows me to better identify the areas which I want to be slightly darker. Same on the hair. And the back. I'm definitely going to apply some more white afterwards. Okay, that's it for the black, I guess. So here's where we are at this point. This is the shield.
Hi guys, Peter Wargaming.
Sorry for the noise. Just switch the windows for my reference that I have for painting marble, where I found some nice tutorial on painting it, and I wanted to check in on how to continue. And I think I will continue with applying some of the green glazes. So glazing time coming up, or maybe even some gold veins. I'll actually try with some gold veins, and for that I will of course need gold, and I will take maybe this one glorious gold from Game Color Range. I will see how it works if I apply it. I just need to give it a good shake. We'll have a look at my reference pictures. Okay, there is gold, and let's see how it goes. Doesn't sound very convincing, but that's the best I have now, because that's something new that I'm trying now. But if you don't try new things, you can get stuck. So I'm just taking now the thin brush, the small brush, and applying some hints of golden, pure gold, some random, seemingly random streaks of gold. It's actually looking pretty interesting. Definitely adds some kind of shine. So almost halfway through the stream and looking pretty good with progress with what I have in mind. Now I'm at the point where I'm trying out something different, something I haven't done before. So adding those streaks of gold, seemingly random streaks of gold. Using just the tip of my brush, in a slow controlled manner, just dragging it across the surface to create those streaks of gold painted on white. Okay, let's get some focus in here. Must be killing the camera to really get soak in all those colors and variations and details on the surface. Maybe I can position the camera differently, see if it works. That's it. That's the stable quality. Amazing. Thank you for the help. Yeah, it's a quite unique look. I'm having fun for sure, because that's something different. And you know, whenever I paint something for the first time, it's kind of exciting. And I think those like pools of gray, that's what I want to add also. Don't want to overdo it, because there are different types of marble, different structure of colors in it, and I don't want to overdo it, so I'm just moving slowly from one element to another. But I think that, yeah, that some kind of glossy finish would be a welcome addition here. So seemingly random thin lines of gold. I think I will streak them a little bit with gray afterwards, just so that they are more clearly visible and stand in slight contrast to the gray part once I add it. So the streaks of gold really pop, really immediately catch some attention. So let's add some of it to the tail as well. It's hard to, seems counterintuitive to paint something that's meant to look random. Or maybe that just goes against my nature as a painter. So it's a bit like stepping out of my comfort zone. But I reckon it's good. You should do it every now and then to develop as a painter. just look at my reference. Okay, so different length and width of those gold veins are pretty common. It's a good exercise in brush control as well, because you don't want this red thin line to feel completely out of place. You want something that looks like tiny, essentially like tiny veins of gold. And that's something quite different to what I normally do. And I reckon that makes it even more enjoyable. And the same on the back, because there's plenty of flat white surface, which should make for a lot of room for those vein-like golden structures. And then it will be fun to tint it all in teal color, I guess. And then some more teal, and then back to white. So back to bringing out really the white highlights and all the edge highlighting. So here's a nice little gray vein. So just follow alongside with golden. Big marble boy. I think those gray lines look pretty cool, so I'm going to go with some gray now. For that, I will use null oil mixed in with some of the medium. I think I applied a bit too much of it, but that's not a problem. So here we are, halfway through the stream. 90 minutes to go. Plenty work to do. And no hurry. For sure, no need to hurry here. So I'm just now I've thinned down some of the gray, and we'll add a bit again, trying to make it look as if it's kind of random to form this seemingly random patterns on the shield. And while I have it on the palette, I might as well use it to fill in some of the recessed areas, which will give them a nice transition. And then I'll go again back to white, but that will happen a bit later. I can still use golden around those areas which were covered with gray and black to further boost it. I mean, boost the golden part. The black part needs no boosting because it looks dark enough anyways. Now to the front. Applying it and then removing the excess with my finger so that it dries in less controlled manner. I think I might use some sponge for more touches of white afterwards. Now I get a bit more of this golden shade. Adding some thin gold lines along the black parts. Now, what to do next? I guess tinting part, I think. So I'll start with teal tint, and that's going to be one of my favorite contrast colors, which is Athematic Blue, but I want it really thin, so I'm going to use, first I'll put this away, this one maybe to the side. So I'll first apply the medium, the mixing medium, the express medium, which will thin down the paint, but then it won't lose its covering properties. So it still will be like applying a light touch of teal, which is going to make it hopefully look more awesome. It's like tinted marble. And first off, I'm applying it very thin down, very much thin down. Then I will apply pure Athematic Blue just to further boost some of the color there. And now it's really starting to come together, I think. Just want to make sure that the layer is super thin. And doesn't pool on the surface, because that would just look messy. Especially that I want to further bring it together with Athematic Blue applied directly. To further boost some of those areas. Looking pretty interesting. Definitely starting to look like what I had in mind. So an angry statue. Now let's wait for it to dry a little bit. Or actually, while it's drying, I can use some pure aromatic blue. And just lightly add a bit more of this turquoise shade to some of the areas, just being very selective about it and trying not to apply too much of it so that it doesn't create a very structured pattern. I want more of seemingly random coloring, more around areas which had already been covered with this very light shade of teal. Now I'm worried this can look a little bit chaotic for right now. That's all under control. Now I want it to dry thoroughly. So let's just stop painting for a second. So that's the shield. Nice and focused. That's the side view. And that's a bit on the back. So now I need to wait a bit for it to dry. But actually, while it dries, I can do something fun. So I'll use a sponge. Just need to find it. Here's the sponge. Just grab a piece of it. And I'm going to dip it in white. Well, first of all, set some white on my mini palette. Make sure that that it's torn, it's not cut, that the edges are irregular. Remove the excess. And you see this leaves this kind of pattern. I'm not sure if the camera catches it well. I'll just do it on my knuckle. See it seemingly random patches of white. I'm going to use this on the miniature now. So instead of dry brushing, I can use this technique focusing on the edges. So I'll do the outline of the shield first. than the details on the face. On the lion face on the shield. I will repeat the fine details like teeth later on. It leaves some kind of like particles, which work quite well, I would say. Again, more on the shoulder pad here. The same on the face. So I'm essentially trying to combine a couple of different techniques here. And create some highlights in not the most standard way. So not going with standard layering or dry brushing. Because what I'm doing now, the main difference is that using a sponge dipped in white allows me to create the illusion that there is more of a texture to the surface rather than those very, very slow and meticulous highlights that I would normally be applying. So a bit more of that. So there's the monument. I think what I will do now is I will still use some of the dry brushing, which I've been avoiding until now, just to make sure those edge highlights are locked in. So there's my dry brushing brush, wiping the excess, and just doing some quick overbrush to really define some of those raised areas. All right. And now, still using the white and thinning it down maybe. I will do some very light highlights on those flat surfaces. It seems like these could use a bit more love. So just being selective and maybe taking a different perspective so that those highlights become less ragged and more refined. And that way this thin down white works as a kind of filter over the teal color. Kind of mutes it down a little bit, but at the same time brings the whole thing together. I will need to be very, very careful on the base, just to make sure that the white stays white. I don't want I want the miniature to stand in contrast to what is on the base. But that's the challenge for the final hour, which is ample time to actually see it through. It's funny, I'm essentially applying my white on white. And then I will use some less diluted white for those teeth, both on the shield and on the miniature itself. And then I think I will reinforce further the golden elements. See the inside of the shield and the perspective here. I think it looks much better on the flat surface, like the inside of the shield, because that's where the texture can really, really shine through. It's really hard to replicate this kind of texture on a more dynamic surface. I mean, by dynamic surface, I mean more dynamically posed miniature. So I'm now making sure that those don't look like ink dots, ink spots, just are well blended into the structure. maybe a bit more white on some of the raised areas. Trying to get those teeth down. I'm grabbing a slightly smaller brush now, and maybe less diluted white, more directly from the pot. And let's get those teeth marked out clearly. Because teeth are still part of the marble structure, right? But by giving them extra punch of white, they will just stand more in contrast with the rest. More diluted white on those teal elements, just to kind of filter them in better, just to bring it all together better. I have no idea what I'm doing. That can be the perception of what's happening here, but I think I'm getting it back under control, because it seemed like it became a bit too much of everything all over the place. But it's one thing, it's hard enough to paint marble, and second, it gets even more challenging when you try to calibrate that and paint the kind of marble that you have on flat surface onto a miniature which is fully three-dimensional, and it becomes all the more challenging then. No color at all. Hey, it's hard to. The idea is that this is a marble statue, and my intention here has been to kind of replicate the texture of marble, which might not be that clearly visible in a video stream, but it's got a lot of nuances. And the idea is that the hair, the shield, and all the straps, everything is painted with the same approach, so that it indeed looks like a statue come to life. So there is no differentiation between different elements, right? So that those straps are not leather, the tail is the same. That was the idea here, and it's just how it's been executed. It's a different approach, and I wouldn't say it's necessarily easier. I've tried, filtering, saturating slightly different glazes just to make the texture look richer. There is plenty of color in it. Just need to, it will all become clearer when I take good pictures of it. So I wouldn't say that there isn't any color. I would say that it's just a bit more subtle and spread over the whole miniature. So that's quite different approach to what I would normally do on a miniature. But it is what it is. I'm going to go once more over it with some touches of gold. No, it's just different approach this time. I had painted this miniature before as a monument, and then those straps were leather. There was some metallic elements, but this time I wanted to try something different. And to be honest, I'm glad I did, because I think it's been a very interesting and challenging experience. But indeed, at first glance, it feels like this is just one splotch of white and nothing interesting going on here. But, well, I dare say there's plenty of interesting things going here. It's just a different type of challenge that I've put for myself. Oh, and it's when it becomes blurry, it indeed looks like there isn't really anything going on, but there is quite a lot going on. And you know what? I can use the same thing I did with yellow, with white a few minutes ago. I will use it with gold, just to make some seemingly random touches of gold where around those areas where those gold veins are located, just to further kind of boost this pattern. So sorry, Catherine Lama, if that doesn't answer your question fully. All I can say is that I'm very happy with what I see. It has been so far super nice experience, doing something way different and stepping out of comfort zone on so many levels. Now to the front. And I fully agree, it's hard to really tell what the impact of all the work that I've been doing actually is. But trust me, it's there. One more thing I can actually do is further boost the shaded areas just a little bit more to kind of frame them better. That's what I will do next. So not white, maybe all the white might still be used here. I'll now move to a bit darker brown. And for darker brown, I need the shade that will go into the recessed areas better. And that will be Psycho Brown might be already too dark, so maybe Snakebite Leather. Let me just grab the right one. That should be fine. Gorgranta Fur. I'll just mix it in. That's the right consistency. I'll just apply it to some of the recessed areas to further boost them. I also need to paint glowy like eyes on the miniature. But there is plenty of time. There is like 1 hour left in the stream, so don't need to hurry. It's a bit too much. So I said that I don't need to hurry, and I hurried and needed to quickly fix. That's fine. Nothing is really irreversible. So now I will just kind of try to better frame the face. So better framing the details, really locking them in, because it's such a highly and finely detailed element on the miniature that I think it deserves some further boost. Oops. No damage done, just some free movement. Maybe a bit more shade around the eyes, just to lock them in better. I won't be doing any glow effects on those, but, just to get them locked in better. And now the same on the rest of the miniature, just refining some of those deeper shades. Maybe a quick touch up of white here, where the gold hit a bit too heavy. Maybe from this angle I will be able to access more easily. Just creating some additional shade on the recessed areas, adding a bit of warmth since overall composition is rather cold. Now I'm just looking for those areas where I can push in a little bit of additional contrast to create more pronounced highlights as a result. Maybe between the blades, the shoulder, around the area of shoulder blades, could make a bit sense. Okay, and final stretch, final 45 minutes, just being conscious of time. so that I know how much more I can spend on fine-tuning this piece before I call it done. I still have base to finish, which will take several minutes. At this point, it's just about finding those areas which would give this whole thing more of a three-dimensional look. Like those elements of an armor around the knees. Here too, maybe. Oh, and this looks like it could use some deeper shades of brown. I think that I can do the same on the teeth as well, just to kind of frame them in this dark purple so that they will look more feral in a way, I believe. That there is some. Could it be that we have some technical issues? It seems like the stream has slowed down considerably. Let's hope we can continue. Seems better now. And the lighting isn't really the most favorable because it hits it directly, and everything that is highlighted into white looks just plain white. Now let's look maybe some areas where I can still touch up with white a little bit. Like this here, maybe also here. So at this point, I'm just trying to conceptualize how it would be affected by lightning from the top, and very lightly add some white to those areas. And while doing that, I also noticed that there is an area here which could use some shading in the recessed part. because it seems like instead of recessed area there is just a touch of white there, which I don't necessarily want in. Maybe a bit more brown into the mouth area so that it stays slightly darker. And the nostrils. And I will soon get to painting the eyes. So first off, I think I will just use a thematic blue to kind of give the prepare for this glow-like effect. So painting a bit more than actually needed. And I will allow it to dry. And then I will paint some white and then maybe some darker blue. There are options for sure. And while this dries, or maybe I can already paint the pupils in pure white. Yep, there's one pupil. And the other one will be a bit more challenging to get to because I had assembled the miniature before I started painting it, which now seemed like a good idea. But now it's making my life a bit more complicated. Though the other eye isn't really visible at all, but I will still try to get to it. Got to it. Nice. Now I will need to allow the white to dry completely. Before I apply blue, and in the meanwhile I can start slowly working on the base. So for the base I will start with a thematic blue, not a thematic blue, I mean Basilicanum Gray, which I will use on the sand on the base. And I will need to be very careful. I don't want to add any additional color to the emissary model. So I'm just going with larger brush to get those bits with sand out the way, and then I will switch to smaller brush, navigate between those broken tiles, and then I will paint the tiles with red. And there is also a piece of wood here, so a bit of A bit of color on the base for sure, that's nice. I think I'll use just snake white leather on this one. No, I'm not closing it, just giving it a bit of shake and switching to a smaller brush. And really getting to those harder to access bits while avoiding the model itself. And the base has been, well, it was prepared already, right? So it was a resin base and I didn't really need to do anything with it. I think I will just go for darker outline around the left foot to make sure it stays white. Oops. So now let's switch to some red, orange. I'll just grab the paints. There's red, and there's orange, and also some snakebite leather on this piece of wood. Half an hour to go, which is ample time for what I will still need to do, which isn't that much because it won't change dramatically from now on. Now this glow around the eyes. I think I will go with Thalasar blue here. Thin it down. And apply it directly so that we have this glow-like effect going. I've removed too much. Removed too much than I had applied. Not optimal. Not fixable. And maybe a light touch of pure white in the middle of the pupil. I'll wait a bit until it dries better. Now I'll just reapply Thalassa blue, but with a smaller brush. And maybe create some kind of transition. For the glow. And as the time is slowly winding down until the end of the stream, I'm feeling pretty good about what I have left. Next stage will be orange on the base for those bricks. And I'll start with the ones near the leg, near the foot. Just don't want the white to catch on too much of it, ideally not none of it. Okay, no need to hurry. Just keep it steady, slow, firm, controlled brush movements, and things are perfectly fine then. Okay, and almost done. I'm just being extra careful because that way, when the orange is neatly laid out around the foot, it provides a kind of framework which presents this part of miniature even more favorably. I'll need to repeat that on the other foot. And we'll soon call it done, but still I would say about 15-20 minutes to go before I feel happy with what I have. I mean, I already feel pretty happy, but there can still be some improvements. And for my next stream, I think I will do Gibson, the henchman from the box. And as this is again an interesting and very complex miniature, I particularly like the fact that this guy from Ivan's box has an ability called Mechanical Firefly, and the model is actually holding a contraption that looks like a firefly, like a steampunk version of Firefly. So some more orange on the tiles on the base. So that's actually makes all the nuanced colors on the body of the miniature more clearly visible, I believe. Let me take a quick peek. Alrighty. Now as for some final touches, a dot of white on the pupil. That's what I need to make the eye really pop. That's more like it. Maybe a little bit more. Looks solid. Now I will need to give it some thought as to how to varnish it. So I can go with, I'll probably go first with matte varnish, just to bring everything together in a neat way. And then I think I might do some gloss varnish on the miniature, actually, just to bring back the shine that marble generates. So now adding some touches of red to orange on the bases, on the base of this big guy. Trying to stay in the middle of each of the bricks on the base. Trying to avoid the white of the miniature. And finally a light touch of brown. And then I can use some hot air from hair dryer to speed up the drying process and give it a very light dry brush to really pick on those edges of those bricks. I think darker brown works better on this piece of wood plank. There are still some areas which I can lightly touch on, like this here, or some kind of transition got lost. between the element of armor on this armored monument. That is getting close to the finish stage. Now I will blow some hot air. So excuse apologies for the noise up front. Just want to make sure that the base is fully dry. I'll take it away for a second. Okay, I think that's as dry as it gets. And now I will use some dry brush just to make sure that the structure of those bricks on the base is clearly visible. So I'll use an off-white. Give it a bit of dry brush. It's been quite an interesting experience, as I haven't used that many colors. And you know me and my painting style, I'm typically able to paint up to 5 fully fledged miniatures during one stream. So painting just one model doesn't seem like much, but it's been something new, something different. Definitely an interesting experience. I learned a lot for sure. And I will need to take some good pictures tomorrow just to really showcase the level of detail that's put into making it look like it's marble, not just pure white. But for what's it worth, here he is compared to another miniature with deep saturated green colors. Now one more thing, so the rim of the base. I need pure black for it. Then I still might do some very small tweaks to it, but I've yet to see. I'll just change to a smaller holder so that I have full access to the rim of the base from all angles. Just makes this part a bit easier. Let me just grab my old brush, which I can use for that. Almost done. Just clean the brush. And might as well switch it back to the original holder. And that's pretty much it. As you can see, this dark base and saturated shades of red on those broken factory elements kind of provide a nice contrast to what we have on the main body. And just to wrap it up, I started with pure white with some hints of gray in the recessed areas. Then okay, one thing I can still do, I still see one small piece for improvement, one room for improvement, well, some room for improvement. So let me just quickly fix that up. Then I started with adding some light touches of sepia-like brown to the recessed areas, which will gradually darkened with different shades of brown and some streaks of gold to imitate the texture of marble. I think this guy will make a really solid centerpiece of any explorer's army. Let me just make sure I take good pictures of it tomorrow in good daylight. And for next stream, let me show you guys what I have in mind. So I will paint from English Ivan 4 set. I'm going to paint this guy. His name is Gibson DeWalt. And there he is. I already have him prepared. Let me just pull him out. There he is. That's the miniature. Quite interesting miniature. Seemingly static pose, but this device that he's holding, this electrical button or dragonfly, will make for some fun detailing. Lovely miniature for sure. And there he is compared to the large guy that will be guarding him on any battlefield. All right, so that's maybe a different view with more favorable lighting. That's how he came out. Pretty happy with the progress over the stream and what's been achieved. Thank you guys for sticking by and following. Make sure to check the other streams. The next one is coming this Wednesday, same time. And the video recording will be available